that's what you're seeing there. I'm basically doing a circle coming back to it, and when I circled, I got into shallower water, and that's why it narrowed out and then got deep again. Great question. Anybody else with these photos? So here we go. Talking about what we've got going on here. So we've got depth at target. So this is just like when I had my smaller arrow key and we were talking about the depth at target. So this, what I've done here is I've actually zoomed in on a specific location. So I saw what I thought were fish, because as you guys can see these little marks here, it's not as distinguished, you know? So if I was zoomed out, they're very tiny. So I was like, that looks suspicious. So I clicked on it and I zoomed in on it. And then that's my zoomed in image. And this here, these bright yellow lines are the individual black floats under the floater. And then here, I've got my pilings coming down to hold the floater. So all of these fish, I've got a few fish on the outside of the floater there, sitting ducks. And you've got, and here you've got right under the floater, and then you've got a few little black spots here. Those are other fish as well. So with this image, I've got that spot right here. You know, this is an arrow. So you've got the center of that is going to mark my depth at target, so I know how deep I'm working. You know, that's very important, especially when you're working artificial. You need to know if you need to have an 1/8 ounce head or if you need to have a 1/4 ounce head, what size plastics you're going to use, things like that. All come into play with the depth at target. So here I've got my depth right here in the center, 11.7 feet. I've got the distance to the right of the boat where the target is. So as you can see, I've got 25 feet almost dead on that line there. So I've got 24.9 feet away from the vessel. And then heading to go to and distance from your boat. So as I've already passed, I got this image, I paused it, and then I went on up the creek a little bit and I took a look. So this, when I screenshotted this, I paused it and took a screenshot 100 yards later. So that's telling me I need to go back on a 234-degree heading. So this comes into play, and we'll talk a lot more about this in the upcoming seminars when we start talking about the nearshore stuff. This will come into play big time, because with this, I've got objects to go off of. You know, I've got visible piers, but when you're out there in the middle of the ocean, you don't know where, you don't know where what is unless you are relying on this. So this would tell me, go back 328 feet at a 234 heading, and that's where that school of fish will be. So if I marked a big school of black drum, 300 yards off the main structure in the nearshore reef, which they're out there and they do sit way off those structures and just work their ways around the reefs in big numbers. And that, can't wait to find that. So, and this will help me a ton here using these numbers. So pay attention on your unit to little things like that. Don't just blow it by. Pull out your manual and see what those numbers are telling you, because that can help you decide on how you're going to approach those fish or what you need to do. Okay?
Probably the same thing on yours, but on a swimmer, I don't know, if you were to pause that and then you keep going,
yeah,
you can roll your cursor to something and then hit a waypoint on that cursor.
Yep.
It'll put a waypoint on your map in the actual spot, so you can go
back to that waypoint. Yep, exactly. You're 100% right. I can do the same thing. So on this unit, I've got this is a touch screen and it has the buttons, the manual usage as well. So I'll be able to go over and press my mark button like you're saying once I tap on the screen where the school of fish is. Yep. So you can make waypoints as well. Great point. So very helpful information there. And one thing that you see here that's a great feature with the Humminbird, we all love trolling motors. If you have spot lock or an iPilot trolling motor, you're in heaven. So that iPilot, I call it my first mate. I've got a cable hooked from my unit to my trolling motor that allows me to operate all the features of my trolling motor from my unit. So that's where I start talking about that one boat network. Everything's done at my helm. You can't see it on this picture, but when you get ahead, I also have this, my GPS Bluetooth to my talons, my anchor poles. So when I come up on a school of fish, I can come over here and I can tap on the screen and I can come over and hit spot lock and it'll take me back to that spot. And so you can choose waypoints to spot lock on and things like that, being able to operate being able to operate different technology on the boat all from one setting is great. Being able to, having to pick up multiple remotes and, try to figure out which remote is what for a different tool. Once you have these technologies, being able to operate it there, and that's what you see here, this bar, and then you can exit out and it'll bring up a full screen again. So yes, I do use my trolling motor when I'm finding fish. Here is an example, I had it on a 3.5 setting. What I'll do is just kind of bump it in and out just to you want to keep a steady speed. Don't be going 2 miles an hour and then speed up to 4 and then back down to 3 because that's going to distort your image a little bit. Try to keep a good, consistent heading.
So can you set your trolling motor with this to make it where you do not go too shallow? Because if you're in front of the boat, you can't see your depth.
Oh yes,
So
no, good point.
do you guidelines to?
No, it doesn't. As far as like raising it up or keeping it at a certain depth,
Or not
you
allowed to
can't.
get too
Well, no.
shallow?
So what you can do is you can go to your chart and you'll have like a contour line, and you can tell the trolling motor to follow the contour line on your GPS. So it'll keep you at that depth line. Great question. And a lot of the trolling motors, the different brands of trolling motors, and also the different series of trolling motors are coming with that feature to be able to follow that contour line. If it has the iPilot technology, it has this technology as well to be able to follow. And the bass guys use that a ton. Like if they're finding largemouth in 8 feet of water, they're going to set that trolling motor, they're going to go on their GPS, they're going to tune a setting to be able to brighten, like do a red line on 8 feet of water, and they just tell that GPS or that trolling motor to follow that contour line, and they know they're in that depth the whole time. But great question there.
When you say you basically just kind of do a drive-by where you think the fish are going to be, or say you're in the jetties and you're rolling down the rocks, is it necessary usually to stop and zoom in and really take a look at it? To see
If
where the fish
it's
are?
something that catches your attention, definitely. Like you mean like this square here?
Yeah.
I'm only doing this because you see how on two pictures back, like that's very obvious.
Yeah, that's-
Those are very
Yeah.
very distinguished. Here, they're a little more faded. So when I was zoomed out, you almost could hardly see them. They were little specks. So I was like, oh, that looks fishy. And so I click on it, zoom in on it, and then you can see better detail. And then I'm like, oh yeah, those are definitely fish the way they are all set up, head into the current. As if you look at those shadows real closely, you can see where the shadow kind of tapers off. That's going to be your tail. So like the more blunt end of the shadow is going to be the head. So that's the way he's facing. And a lot of times, the current's running really hard in this image, so the fish are all kind of facing into the current. But if the current slows down a little bit, I've noticed that the schools of fish will be a little bit more like this, like in a ball, all facing different directions. And so there's no uniform to that there as much as it is here, where they're kind of they all have that heading up current. Because the current again here is drifting, I'm going with the current. So it's going to be facing back behind me into the current. But I only zoom in when I see something that looks suspicious. So here, this is where Dave and I got to spend a little bit of time on the water together. And him and I spent some time on his boat. How long ago did you purchase your unit, Dave?
June of last year.
June of last year, okay. So just in a year or two of technology, I mean, you can see, now granted, I was getting images similar to this last year, but once I upgraded and went to the newer generation, I was getting a much clearer image. And you can see as the technology, don't be discouraged because it may not be something you're doing. That it could be making sure your transducer is mounted properly. Mounting the transducer is a huge part. If that thing is off center or not at the right angle by 1 degree, it can mess up your imaging incredibly. And so I actually installed my transducer myself, and I probably spend a half a day doing it. It's kind of silly, but I triple check and then triple check again, and then I have the boat on levels, and I level the boat to the perfect level. One of that, I get crazy. But that's how I'm getting these images, and so it makes a difference. And paying attention to detail. Fishing is a lot of times when you pay attention to small detail, it can, knock you up just a whole nother level as far as your fish catching abilities. So here we've got the same row of pilings. Dave and I really worked on getting as clear of an image on his as we could mine. I got on the boat with him for 20 minutes. We played with some settings. And this is what we were able to come up with here. So you've got this line of docks, or this line of pilings here. You can still see each individual piling there. And so he would definitely still be able to make out some fish if they're at the base of these pilings, just not quite getting that range there. And so not all the time is it something that you're doing. Feel free to contact the company that provides you the product. They want you to be happy. If you explain to them, my unit's 3 years old, I really want to try and upgrade my imaging, what can I do about it? They may say, well, your unit's great, but we have an upgraded transducer now. So you can upgrade your transducer, or they'll tell you, your situation or what you may have going on that is allowing you not to get the image that you're looking for. So don't be afraid to contact the tech support and reach out to them, and they're great about explaining to you what you need, what you're looking for, and things like that, because every unit's different between Garmin, Simrad, Humminbird, Lowrance, all of them. They all have their differences. So you can see the difference there, and then we got another great image. So we've got a sunken boat here. You can make out the bow and the stern. This is a very old sunken. This was actually back in Backman's Creek. So if you guys are familiar with that area back in the Folly, where old Backman Seafood used to be, all that structure back in there. Multiple shrimp boats sunk. So you can see we got the same, very similar structure on this side. But if yours is looking like this, there's options, there's ways to make that right. You just have to do your research and look into your unit and software updates. When we get a little bit further ahead, I'm going to talk about software updates too. Sometimes, like if I bought a new unit, sometimes that unit may have sat on the shelf for 4 or 5 months. It wasn't built 3 weeks ago. So they may have come out with a software update since then. So just because you have a new unit doesn't mean you have the latest software on that. And it's very easy to do. Every unit's different. For Humminbird, I found the quickest way to do it is to go to the Humminbird site here, and you can just go to the site. Every site's different. Like I said, contact tech support and they'll help you. But the software updates are huge. I go on here, I download a file onto my SD card, and then I plug the SD card into the unit, and it downloads the software. And usually, with most units, when you put that SD card in and you boot it up, it immediately catches on, that it's got new software on that chip.
Simrad's the exact same way.
Yep. And that can make a world of a difference, even on the operating speed and anything like that. So really make sure you pay attention to those software updates.
I got some mine looks more like your Humminbird than his. I got something he's got on.
That's funny. And all about mounting, like we talked about, you say you get a different image than what he got?
I'll give it almost exactly what you did.
Yes, exactly. So everybody's capable of getting that image. It's just, there's many factors that can stop you from getting that image, and you gotta start and go through each one to make sure all the steps are right. Because if you have everything right but one step, that can mess your whole setup up. So one big step, always make sure you have that software update. And you know, Dave, he may have the upgraded transducer. You know, y'all may have the same unit, and you may have the.
Obvious, you can sense my frustration.
Yeah. I felt the heat a little bit. I was like, oh man.
I went back home and I said, okay, his transducer is new since January. Simrad must be keeping pace. What do they have? Do I have the latest? And it turns out I did not. The latest is called active imaging, and it's basically, it looks almost the same. The transducer, it's a little bit deeper, and
More guts.
people that are knowledgeable with them say that it's significantly better. Less than $300. It bolts on the same bolt holes. All you gotta do is pull the old cable, pull the new cable, and plug it in the same slot, and it just automatically notices it. So I haven't had to go in the water yet to try it, but maybe I'll post on our Facebook or something when I get some new images.
Yeah, now you guys can see this is the image that he was getting last week.
I'm hoping I get more like something on the left now.
There you go. You will. You will. With your determination, I know you will.
Mine was a structure scan HD. That's what I had before.
I got a total scan, mine looks more like the one on the left.
Okay. Yeah.
You haven't got that. You haven't seen that?
Not yet.
Should be sharp on two bond.
Ben, how did you come to start using Humminbird units? Is that a recommendation or?
You know, I went off of recommendations of people that I had a lot of respect for in the industry, as far as people that have been in the fishing industry a long time and have seen the increases in technologies. And they said, from the type of fishing that I do, I'm going to get that, you know, that incredible image that I was showing you. I mean, that clarity, like he said, he gets it on his Simrad as well, but it's all about what you're used to and what you like. And as I got into using this stuff more, I kind of just went with one and I stuck with it because it's what you know. And every unit throws a little bit different image. You know, the fish may look a little bit different, the objects may look a little different. And so knowing your unit is everything. I mean, a lot of these tournament bass guys, when they're looking for fish, they're doing the pre-fishing before the tournaments. I know the tournament guys, they'll tell me, they'll say spend 8, 9 hours a day just running their units, not picking up a rod one time. And these are like the Elite Series winners telling me this.
If we could for a second, you said something very important. Guys, we have a VIP with us tonight, Mr. Bradford Beaver. Bradford, would you stand up, please, sir? Bradford is our bass guy.
Yes, sir.
Right there on our team.
He knows.
You talk about bass. And you and Bradford just kind of elaborate how many hours you spend, and he just won the Santee tournament. We won't get a loan from him, so.
Well, I get his autograph.
I spend a lot of hours on idling around looking, and coming up now from here, moving on when the fish are moving offshore. I mean, your depth finders are your eyes under the water. And I'll tell you what, I used to not trust them, but they do not lie to you. If they say there's a fish down there, he's down there. He might not bite, but he is down there. But
Especially once you know what you're looking for too.
yeah, I had to, for me to figure out how to really use them, I had to go to a lake that had a lot of fish. I went to Lake Chickamauga in Tennessee, and just probably one of the best bass fishing lakes in the country. And when I went there, I realized the capabilities that my depth finders had. And like that screen right there, I run Lowrance and Humminbird on my boat.
Oh, nice. You run
Because
both. That's very cool.
I've seen the positives of one and the negatives of another, and I couldn't do with just one. I know some guys that are running 3 brands on their boat. They have Garmin's on it too. But I mean, side imaging wise, I don't know if there are any Lowrance reps in here or Humminbird reps, but that side imaging on the left, the new Mega, I think you're running the Solix.
Yeah, I'm running the Solix still.
You're not going to find a better side imaging than that.
It is
As
incredible.
far as side imaging goes, now, there might be other features on a different one to be better than that one, but as far as side imaging goes, that Mega Plus now, side imaging is by far the best side imaging on the market.
No doubt, buddy. I appreciate your time. I look forward to chatting with you some more. So you just won, right? Just
Yeah.
won a big tournament. That's awesome, man. Congratulations.
Thank you.
I heard about that. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you for coming, buddy. So, like I said, these bass guys, I have a lot of respect for them because they live off this stuff and they make a living off of it. And it's pretty neat to have the opportunity to learn from guys like that. So, moving forward here, you can see, I was just talking about on this image here, connecting to my spot lock, being able to have that speed of anchoring down on that spot on these fish with just that one tap of the button on the screen there is a great feature. And here's proof in the pudding. This is on a school fish. This is a husband and wife that fish with me quite often, and we found a school redfish, and this was within 5 minutes. They both had one on, and end of the trip, we found the fish within the last 20 minutes. We had been catching slot fish all day. I got some bigger marks on the imaging, dropped down and got some fish just a little bit over slot, but neat to be able to, and as he said, be able to finally make it happen. And once you make it happen that one time, you make that connection, it opens up a whole new world for you. And so that's proof in the pudding there. And so here is what we were talking about. I wanted to show you guys how I'll run different settings. I have a larger screen, so I have the 15-inch screen. So I've got my side imaging up on top. Everybody likes to do things a little bit differently. I like to have more of the horizontal view for my side imaging just because I get a little bit more of a view further out from the boat. If it was one of these here, it just not as clear of an image. I really depend on the detail on that side imaging more than I do the 2D and the down imaging. That's just me. Everybody fishes differently. But what we've got here, this is a sailboat mast. I was actually going against the current in this image, so it's a little bit distorted. Around here, as y'all know, with the moon tides, the water can run really hard and it does affect it. But you've got the base of the hull here, and then you've got, all the mast with all the cables coming up. And the base of that mast is completely submerged, but the top of the mast is actually sticking out of the water. So that's what you see there. Again, boat control. Here's where I'm operating my talons from my unit, so I can pop this up just like I can my trolling motor and put down my left talon or my right talon, or I can illuminate one of the lights off of it if I'm working off the back deck, be able to see what I'm doing on the back deck in the morning or late at night. It's a great feature. So again, boat control, great feature to have when you get there and you get all those toys. So again, back to the system updates. Very important part, very important to do. Make sure you have the latest software. Neat little shot. Here you've got this is a cell phone, so this was, when I first got my unit, we made a trip up to the lake, and I marked this alligator up on the bank, and I took a picture of him on my phone. That's why it's so distorted. You can see the alligator and his tail there going down the bank. So he was sitting up on the shore sunning, kind of spooked him, and as I passed by, I heard him jump in. And so I circled back around and came back down that area when I was down in Florida picking the boat up, and got a picture of that alligator there on the imaging, and you can even see his legs coming out, and that's him just off the bank right after I passed there. And you can see how big that object is, this is a pretty big gator here up on the bank, and it's a pretty large image. You can't tell because I'm not zoomed out very well there, but kind of neat to find a gator on there. And use dolphins, things like that that are moving around you. I use dolphins a little bit to help me kind of fine tune my imaging. I would ride by where the dolphins are and I'd flip it on and I'd try and find them on there. I'd play with the settings and I'd kind of ride around them. I wouldn't harass them or anything, but just circle around them and give them some space and try to get them on your imaging, and that they can kind of help you, give you something to go off of. Here, this is an image that's not perfect. This is, I think a boat went by, I got rocked a little bit. It's not very clear, but I saw fish. There's fish on this image. And you've got this dock. We talked about how on some docks you have the floater that comes off the front, some that come off the side. So this dock here, you can see the pilings, has a ramp that comes off the side. And then this bright yellow line, I know it's very tough to see from far back there, but that's going to be the outer edge of my floater. And so this is real shallow up under this floater here, probably 4 to 6 feet, and then right on the outer edge of that floater it really starts to drop. And you can see a couple little marks here. So this dock I've been fishing since I was a kid. And I would always fish, I always did really well up under the ramp, like right on the outer corner between the fixed dock and the floater. Well, look where those few fish are sitting if you can see them, right where I normally catch them. But there's times that I ride by that spot and I waste 20, 30 minutes of my customer's time fishing it and I don't catch anything and I'm bummed. I'm like, man, I just whacked them right here yesterday. So what this unit allows me to do is ride by and I'm focusing on that one spot, like that 5 to 10 foot area where I know those fish really like to hang out. So I'm focusing on that spot, and as soon as I pass it, if I see anything that indicates, a fish, I'm gonna give it a try. But if I have an area that just looks like this, where it's just blank, like he said, they don't lie. If the fish are there, you're gonna mark them, and especially if you know you're marking them and you have confidence in your unit. I know those little marks, they're not as great as those marks that we saw before, but definitely worth giving a try, and it ended up producing. They were right there. Not a lot of fish. There was probably 8 of them sitting right there. You can see you've got one down here on the outer edge of that floater, and then a few kind of under the corner of it. But those fish right there are sitting in a place that I've been fishing since I was a little boy. And now I'm able to ride right by it and see them on the imaging and know whether I'm going to waste my time there fishing. So, great feature for me with my customers, because sometimes I have limited time with them, and I want to make sure that I'm using and taking advantage of every minute I have with them. So no time wasted there. Here, this was actually in the Wapoo Cut. Riding through the Wapoo Cut, you got all the big rocks on the side and a few of the docks that come out. These are 2 big bull reds that are sitting right here. And you can see that tail come down on that fish and that big high arched back on that mark there. So big bull reds move all through the Wapoo Cut. I mean, it's a pinch point. They're going upriver, they're coming back and forth through there. And there's a lot of hard current. You can see where my image got real distorted here. I think I had like a 5 knot current that day. I mean, you could put the boat in, or probably a 4 knot current. You could put the boat in neutral and it would just rip down current. So if you tried to turn around and go up current, you would get more of an image like that. That's what I've found. Maybe, there's some settings. If you may fish in some current, you can give me a pointer there. But have you found that, working down current, I know you probably don't fish a ton of current.
No, not really. I mean, it's the speed is what would change it for me.
Yes, that speed. But as you can see here, y'all notice a consistency with every time I've got a good image. I'm right around that 2 mile an hour mark, but I'm still getting great images up to 4 miles an hour. But I'm not, plowing at 10 to 15 miles an hour getting a good image. It's going to become distorted. But I'm marking big fish on these, and the reason that I know those are fish is because I have confidence in my unit, and you can just, once you know what the fish are looking like on your unit, you can just tell. And this is an area that I set big baits up, chunks of crab, live menhaden. I'll throw big soft plastics through there at certain times of the year. And those bull reds, sometimes there'll be 50 of them, and sometimes there'll just be 1 or 2 passing through like they do in the heat of the summer now. You can see that water temperature is getting up a little bit. That was just a few weeks ago, so they'll start to spread out some. So again, you're not always looking for big giant schools. Sometimes you'll see smaller schools, 1, 2 fish, 3 fish once you get to know what you're looking for. All right, so here's our bait. The image is a little bit distorted. I was making a turn, trying to get back to the bait, and the bait ended up being right under me on both sides of the boat. So this shadow that you see that is casted here, that's the school of menhaden underneath my boat. So just like the pilings, it's going to cast a shadow and mark a school of bait. So what I've got here, this big black disturbance here with all these lines coming off, that's all menhaden. And so underneath the boat, as you guys have experienced how thick these menhaden will get, this was, I was on spot lock. I think that's what it may have been. I may have been on spot lock. No, I was not on spot lock. But these menhaden are coming underneath the boat. As you can see here, I could close my eyes and cast and catch them. But if this was coming by right here, and none of this was here, and those fish, as you can see, right here, they're almost up on the surface. My boat is the surface. And so they're almost up on the surface here, but here they're down low. They're about halfway down the water column. You know, they're probably, I'm in 15 feet. Those fish are sitting anywhere from 6 feet down to the bottom. So what I'm going to do is, instead of yanking my net like I would on this side, I'm going to wait till it gets down there until I start to feel that bait in the net. Then I'm going to pull. So this is where it really helps me finding those schools of menhaden in low light, because what brings them to the surface 9 times out of 10 is that high sun. And at night, you really don't find a lot of popping menhaden. Go ahead, Ryan.
Not how far behind the boat is that?
So behind, how far? I didn't click it. I would imagine, gosh, yeah, probably 25. So, you know, if you've got this distance, you can do the same thing here. So you're probably 25 feet back, roughly. Great question. But I'm not going to throw on that once it's there. That's 25, you know, anywhere from 15 to 30 feet back behind me. So I'm not going to be throwing on that school of bait because it's way back behind the boat. This is where you got to be on your toes. You have the down imaging next to the side imaging. Like I said, once you see them pass through on the down imaging, you look at this real quick. You see which side they're passing through. In this case, I've got them on both sides. But I would throw on the left here because you can see I've got a lot more bait here. So I know, don't throw on the right because they've already passed. That's kind of like the tip of the school of the bait fish. Here I've got this is the meat of the school over here on the left. So throw off on the left, load up.
So you only had that one little bit on the right, you want to get back to it. How are you going to get back to it?
If I would circle back to it, I could put a waypoint on it, but as we know, bait's always moving. It's never going to stay in the same location. So what I would do is I would mark that, I'd pay attention to my heading and the distance I need to go back to it. I would go back to it and then pay attention to what direction the bait was moving and almost set up like a calculation. You know, say, okay, I've been off the bait for 30 seconds to a minute. They were moving down current at this speed. I think they're going to be down here. And sometimes I'll try to get up ahead of them and let them pass through me again. So you can pay attention to where that bait's moving through and try to set back up on that line if you lost them and need to come back. But great point there. Great question.